gonna review all the rest like no one ever did. To find them is my real test, to update every Sid. I will travel to many worlds, but mostly ones from 7. Cause if I don't, then I will die, and I will go to heaven.
It's REFFOID, gotta review them all.
There's a deadline, I am running out of time.
It's REFFOID.
Oh, that's my enemy in a world of Final Fantasy.
It's REFFOID, gotta review them all.
Kingdom Hearts is here too. Let's go kill a god or two. You ask me and I'll review. Or I'll die.
Gotta review them all.
Gotta review them all.
Or I'll die.
Zip! World of Final Fantasy!
Yeah, it's like Pokemon. Some would say it's like Dragon Quest Monsters, but I've never played that, so we're gonna stick with comparing it to Pokemon. In this PS4 age, which I still haven't come up with a name for, Square made the decision to pull back on their quantity over quality attitude. The Wii was done, the Wii U was not worth it, and the 3DS was on its last legs. Plus, they were dominating the mobile game market and making money hand over fist with new gachas and ports of classic titles. So they wanted to try a new spin-off that celebrated the legacy of the franchise but was made higher quality than those old ones, while also still bringing in that younger audience that they realized they were kind of missing now that the Wii and the DS were over with. This was a PS4 game. It was no longer something they could just scrap together in standard definition on the DS. It was a full AAA release, all new assets, HD graphics, pre-rendered voice-acted cutscenes, anime cutscenes, a brand new battle system, Nomura on character design, even its own mobile game tie-in. Only in Japan, and it died a year later. So this is Final Fantasy's monster collecting RPG. You ever wanted to catch iconic monsters from the franchise like Cactuar, Chocobo, or Malboro or something? You can do that. You ever wanted to choose your starter Pokemon with a choice between Baby Ifrit, Baby Shiva, and Baby Ramu? Well, this is the game for you. The story is an original one that uses existing Final Fantasy areas and characters to tell it. The main two characters are siblings, Lon and Rain, with a mysterious past who have to run through various worlds to find their parents. You get some fan service here and there, but the game doesn't really rely on that because by the end of the final act, it's all about the original story going on. Think of how Disney worlds work in Kingdom Hearts and how they're almost inconsequential by the end of the game. But instead of entering the Final Fantasy VII world as you would like the Aladdin world and experiencing a short version of that story and affecting it or something, this game instead decides to take apart areas and characters from all the mainline Final Fantasies and stitch them together into one world where none of their plots are happening and the only plot is the one in this game. So Tidus is there, Yuna is there, but they haven't met each other before, nor have they gone on any sort of life-changing adventure. It does bring into question what all these characters are doing all day. Where do they all come from and what's their story? I guess you're not supposed to question it, but world-building wise, nothing really makes sense here. You'll walk through some spooky woods and end up in the Library of the Ancients from Final Fantasy V, where you'll meet Celeste and Cloud. And then right outside will be the train graveyard from 7. It's like, why, and why? The answer is reference. Remember Thing from the game? Look, it's Thing from the game. And once you make peace with that, you're gonna have a good time. As someone who's played every Final Fantasy before this one, I gotta admit, my favorite part of this game was just pointing at things like, huh, oh, it's that thing from that one. You know, that's most of the game. Especially with the occasional deep cut, as I think the only non-mainline character you can meet in this game is Charlotta. aka Catgirl Mom from Crystal Chronicles Echoes of Time. What makes her so privileged to be in this game? I don't know. And I think the very first character you run into is Chocolina from 13, 2, and 3. Once again running her interdimensional shop. But let's talk about the main cast. Lon and Rain are the quintessential Saturday morning anime sibling duo. Lon is the dumb one, literally not understanding meanings of basic words sometimes so that he could just be the butt of the joke. Rain is the smart and sometimes angry one, so most of the dialogue in the game is Lon saying a stupid thing and then Rain going, "Lon, you're so stupid. Lon's not very bright." Like, that's half the jokes.
Check out that switchcraft.
Now we know which way to go. So whichever one of you thinks you're being clever is about to get a knuckle sand switch.
Ugh! Did I just get owned?
Every now and then there's a more clever one that makes you chuckle, but most of the time a lot of the dialogue is rough to get through. Think 4Kids Americanized anime dialogue. It's really on point. Think Pokemon. It's like Pokemon. One of Lon's catchphrases is just saying dude all the time. Dude this and dude that. It feels like they went, what do Americans say? They say dude, right? Let's have him say dude all the time. He also says, what the honk? What the honk is going on here? I don't know where that came from. And speaking of annoying things, no 4Kids anime cast is complete without the cute mascot character that follows him around. Boy, oh boy, this is Tama. She never shuts up, her voice is really grating, and just listen to how she talks the whole game.
She finally flatlined. Look at what you've reduced her to. Anyway, it seems we're stuck here. All the goop around here makes it hard to look for a way out. Shoulder yourself, Seraphy. I didn't know it was you. What are you even talking about? There's nothing wrong with the way I smell. You big dummy.
Well, at least I'm dumber than you.
Why does she say the in every sentence randomly? There's no reason for it. They probably just thought it was a cute quirk. But in my opinion, this probably made her, I think, the most annoying character in Final Fantasy history. The previous owner of this title was probably the girl who said frickin' in every sentence in Type 0. But at least that was kind of funny. Tama, just annoying, never shuts up, and is with you the entire game, not just a side character who shows up a couple times. Luckily, you can go in the menu and turn off dialogue, but I wanted the true experience, you know, so I left it on and I regret it. So that's a rundown of the world of Final Fantasy. But what about the other hook to the game? What about the monster collecting? Is this game really just a Pokemon ripoff? Well, yes and no. It certainly has a few weird ideas going for it, but the overall concept is what you might expect. They're not Pokemon, they're mirages. You don't catch them with Pokeballs, you imprison them with prisms. You don't fill out the Pokédex, you fill out the Mirage Manual. And you don't evolve them, you transfigure them. Of course, any Mirage you can imprison can be nicknamed too. I like to take their existing name and replace part of it with Bob. So Babliz becomes Bobliz. Malboro becomes Malbobo. And Night Squall, well, that's Night Bob. Oh. Well, apparently that name's not allowed. Alright, just set it to default then. What? That's the default name, why is it not allowed? What's happening? Oh. Maybe the biggest thing to consider when building your team is elemental resistances. Mirages don't have types per se like Pokemon do. Instead, each of them have their own relationship with every element in the game. It's a little weird. So every Mirage you catch, you'll be able to see this chart of how each element affects them. So it's not like how all fire types will be hit the same way by every elemental attack. Someone like Ifrit is going to be 100% fire resistant, but another half fire looking type Mirage might not be 100%, it might be 50%, and it might be weak to lightning for one reason or another, and also resistant to darkness or something. It's really depending on the individual Mirage. Leveling them up works like normal, except You won't be learning new moves on specific levels or anything. You gain an SP for every level, and then you can spend that SP to learn things that you want. You spend these points on the Mirage board, a skill tree that is also unique to every Mirage in the game. Some boards have blank spaces you can fill in with abilities that you find in the wild as items, kinda like TMs from Pokemon. And certain abilities can be used to unblock paths that lead to treasures, kinda like HMs from Pokemon. So you can manage to find a use out of every Mirage you encounter, which is kinda cool because it encourages you to keep catching and catching. Having a variety in your party is actually important. That's why you can hold up to 12 in your party at once with 4 acting on the battlefield. Yeah. Combat's a little weird, we're gonna get into it. But imprisoning every Mirage you encounter can be a lot more challenging than catching every Pokemon. Each one has a battle condition you must fulfill before you can attempt a throw. Sometimes it's as simple as damaging, other times you might have to inflict a specific status condition or something. And you can fulfill this condition multiple times for a stacking effect that increases the likelihood that you will catch this monster. It's really not that easy towards the end, especially when monsters start to flee from you. Sometimes they run away after one attempt, which was just a pain in the butt. Remember trying to hunt those legendary Pokemon that would run away when you encounter them? Remember trying to do that before Quick Balls were invented? Now imagine every Pokemon in the game did that. Yeah, that's not really fun. I appreciate the added challenge of fulfilling specific conditions, but the fleeing part was a step too far. That just made the whole thing tedious. Not to mention, unlike Pokemon, every Mirage you catch starts at level 1 no matter what. Now XP is shared with whoever's in your party, so you can still train them as you play, but they're never going to be as strong as your main guys. But still, when you're in that level 50, level 60 endgame area and you put in all that work to catch that elusive Mirage, it's level 1. And you're like, what am I going to do? Go train them? This is the end of the game. But yeah, all this stuff is more or less like Pokemon, but when we get into the combat, things start to get a little weird. You fight with your 4 Mirages, but also Lon and Rain. They don't have skill trees or anything, but they can be equipped with Mirror Jewels, which will give them specific abilities that you might find useful. So with the 2 of them plus your 4 Mirages, you're technically fighting with 6 party members all at once. And yes, it uses the classic ATB system. You can see how fast everyone's going at this little bar on the side of the screen. That thing can get real crowded, and the weirdest part of all is that once someone begins an attack animation, no matter how long it takes, it doesn't pause the time bar. I don't think this is ever how ATB worked, but I could be wrong. What I do know is the ATB system in this game caused me more stress than ever before. If you're facing a bunch of enemies and you gotta wait for the boss to finish its 30-second attack animation to decide whether or not you need an emergency heal immediately afterwards, you can't wait for it. You gotta click on something because by the time that animation ends, his minions already have follow-up attacks and you can just get sweeped before you even have a chance to move. I thought this was genuinely unfair at times. They're AI, so they decide as soon as they reach the top of the line. So to match them, you need to decide as soon as humanly possible, which is never faster than an AI. But that's always how ATB worked, so I'm not sure what makes this one different. It might just be a mental thing because I don't think we've ever seen the enemy's ATB bar before, and that single factor stresses me out, just makes me anxious. Let me know if you've played this game and felt the same way. As usual, you can just go to the settings menu and switch to wait mode if you don't want to deal with any of that, but I wanted the true experience, so I refused to do that too. Plus, you'll learn fast that you aren't meant to fight with everyone separated like that. You're supposed to stack everyone on top of your head. Yeah, this is the weird part. Stacking Mirages basically combines all of the stats, resistances, and abilities of everybody in the stack, kind of transforming them into one strong unit. The game explains this to you as if sometimes you'll want to be stacked and sometimes unstacked, depending on the situation, but that is just not true at all. The beginning of the game was so confusing because whenever I was unstacked, I would just die in one hit. So when is it beneficial to be unstacked? I went to the internet and they said never. Just stay stacked, never unstacked. It is completely a disadvantage. Stay stacked at all times. And I was like, okay. The game basically tells you, you might rather have one unit with 3 times the strength and health and all that, but maybe you might want 3 units who die in one hit and can't damage anything. I don't understand it at all. Plus, there are a lot of mechanics all about toppling stacks. Enemies try to knock you over, which causes you to get stunned, and then they can pick off your mirages with one hit each. So you gotta stock up on wobble stoppers to stay stable and alive. The game really just does a bad job explaining all this. But the thing about stacking is you can't just throw any old mirage on top of your head. You gotta be smart about it. They share elemental resistances, so you'd be smart to put a 50% lightning resistant guy on top of a negative 50% light resistant guy, because they cancel each other out and then you're not weak to anything. There's also a stability stat that I never figured out what it was influenced by, possibly their weight or something, but if you go in with a weak stack, you'll get knocked over way too easy, so you gotta balance that too. So the cool thing about this is it continues to promote variety more and more. You can't just pick the same 4 mirages and coast the whole game with them. You will be forced to switch them out at some point because you need to resist fire and this is a big firefight or something. Every mirage is classified as small, medium, or large and must be stacked by weight class in that order. If you explore enough, you might even discover XL, extra large type enemies. These are pretty much your legendaries, but if you're lucky enough to catch one, you can only bring them into battle by using up all your MP for a super summon that lasts till you go down. Lon and Rain are considered large types, but can transform into those cube head chibi forms to act as a medium type if you want to make room for big boys. When a mirage is ready to evolve, it can freely change into the bigger form, then back down to the small whenever you want. This way, if you have a medium type that works well in your party, you can still try out its large form and go back if it's not working. Because transforming is not just making your mirage a bigger version of itself, it's turning into an entirely different monster with new resistances, abilities, and stats. And this is why I pretty much never transformed my mirages, because if my small guy upgraded to a medium size, I would have to knock out whoever is my current medium that I'm using, and then I'd have an empty spot and have to find a replacement for the small type, and at that point I'm just creating an entirely new character, and that was just too much work. So, in a nutshell, this is a 2-member party system where the catchable monsters are almost treated as gear that influences your resistances and moves, and there's a stability element to make sure your gear doesn't fall off you. That is basically the combat system. You know, I can't help but compare another game with 2 party members and a monster collecting element. Yeah, I'm bringing up 13-2 again. I was a big critic of the monster collecting in that game, and World of Final Fantasy makes me feel more justified for that. I wished that the monster collecting didn't feel tacked on like a band-aid for the lack of a third main character. Like it had enough depth to be bothersome, but not enough to be interesting. I feel pretty prophetic in saying if you're gonna have monster collecting, make that the whole game, not this extra half-assed thing. After playing this, I think they definitely could have incorporated stuff from here into 13-2 to fix like every problem I had with the combat. And to make things more interesting, I do think this game was helmed by the same designers of 13. Exactly like 13, you gotta use Libra to scan every enemy to see their weaknesses and exploit them. You got that same menu screen with the characters in the middle and the little exclamation points on new stuff with a story archive. And when you summon an XL Mirage, it works exactly like summoning did in 13. And most of all, this game is super linear. The maps look just like 13, and you gotta get through them just by walking forward to the end. I guess some of the stuff started with 10, but you get what I'm saying. This game feels on par, if not higher budget, in terms of production value than these mainline sequels that we've been getting. It speaks to what Square is doing this generation, cutting down on the cheap sequels and investing more time and money to make them bigger. But that'll tell you how the game will more or less play if you ever decide to run through it. Now on the story side of things, the story is mostly an excuse to run you through classic Final Fantasy landmarks and stuff. There's not a lot that happens until it all gets thrown at you in the very end. Also like Kingdom Hearts. I didn't care as much about the story as I cared about the nostalgia bait, so I'll go over it fairly quickly. This next section, I'm just gonna say it's all spoilers. Skip to the next chapter if you don't want to hear it, because like I said, it's basically all at the end. So a twin brother and sister wake up in a world without time, and this annoying rat Tama tells them to go on an adventure. They can't remember why or what they're doing or who they are, but maybe they'll find out along the way. a lady named Enna Crow appears to tell them vaguely about their fate.
Just who do you think you are?
Me? Oh, well... I'm God. Hasta la vista. She's gone.
Dude.
And to find out who they are, they gotta go through Final Fantasy worlds and find the MacGuffins and kill the bad guy. So that's the next 20-something hours of the game, and then we reach the final area, where there are more revelations. Oh no, the bad guys tricked us. We basically fell into their trap and collected the MacGuffins for them, and now they're unleashing terror on the land. We go around fixing it via weird, janky minigames. That was definitely unexpected. This somehow leads us to a path to the final boss layer where we find the two assistant bad guys were actually Mom and Dad. And now we finally get the backstory on our two main characters. They were gifted Mirage users like their mom, but they were massive brats and abused their powers for fun. It was actually them who summoned the big bad guy, Brandalus, from a dimensional portal in their search for more power, and this whole thing is their fault. So the big twist is that the main characters are terrible people, and after they remember their past, both parents die in front of them. Or I guess they were already dead, but their bodies were being possessed, and now their souls are free to move on, I guess. Brandalus appears and said he's gonna conquer all of the A worlds. I don't know if there are B worlds or something, but he's gonna conquer all the A worlds, and we have a final showdown with him. When you beat him, Lon gets all angry and charges at him to finish it, freezing them both in cube stasis forever. He's basically dead. And then Rain cries with Tama, and then the credits roll. The end! Upon reloading your save, you get this prompt that just says, no. This sends you back in time to try to do the final chapter differently? But in this new timeline, Tama doesn't exist because her true form is actually a god that granted Rain a second chance by sacrificing her 9 lives. The important thing is she's gone. Gotta reunite with the 7 legendary Mirages now: Ifrit, Shiva, Ramu, Leviathan, Odin, Diabolos, and Bahamut. That's 7 tough monster catching challenges. There was a massive spike in difficulty here for me. And when you do it, you basically kill and steal the lives of another god and make a new timeline where both Tama and Lon are back. So you kill the bad guys who are possessing your mom and dad again, and finally vanquish Brandalus for good and go back to your original world. And that's the true ending. And let me tell you, this is one of the most terrifying credits sequences I've ever seen in a game. This is too many graphics for these models. Just too many graphics. And if you do some other extra stuff, you get a secret post-credits scene. It features somebody I can only describe as Dark Lon, and he's in trouble or has a plan or something vague. The director of the game said that a sequel is already fully written for this game, so this probably isn't some random thing they threw in. There's a whole story on Dark Lon waiting to be told. Now that's the story. But what I care about is all the characters and the areas and all the references. So if you don't want those spoiled, I'm about to spoil just about every one of them because I had a fun idea to count all of the references to each specific game to determine which game Square Enix loves the most. So everyone make your predictions now. Which game is going to get the most love? Alright, I know what you're thinking. It's gonna be 7, right? Alright, let's make this more fun. Try to predict the one that's gonna get the second most amount of love. Or, even more fun, who's gonna get the least amount. Keep in mind, I'm gonna count areas and characters that you meet along with the story. There are these champion medals where a couple of characters only appear as those medals. They're just like a little item, and that doesn't count. We're only talking about real story stuff here, alright? So, make your predictions. We're gonna run through them lightning fast. Ready? Let's go. So the first world you visit is Cornelia, where you meet the OG Warrior of Light and Princess Sarah. That's 3 points right off the bat for Final Fantasy I. Chocolina is here as Chocolate, but still counts as a point for 13. At the Pyreglow Forest, you meet Yuna, 2 points for 10. Then we run into Charlotta, so fine, I guess Crystal Chronicles Echoes of Time is on the board too. And we have Refia. Don't know Refia? Then maybe you haven't played the 3D remake of Final Fantasy III, which is the only version that gave the main Heroes of Light canon names. I thought this was retcon due to Dissidia and Theatrhythm's FF3 rep being generic nameless Onion Knight guy, and these other names were just never mentioned again. But this is the first time we've seen one of these characters acknowledged outside the card game since the DS. What does this mean for FF3 canon? I don't know, but that's 1 point for FF3. Actually 2 points because she leads us to Saronia, a big city from 3. At the docks we run into Pirate Ferris from 5 and Quistis from 8. We run into Riku from 10 on our way across the sea. We climb a dragon mountain and run into Cowboy Tifa from 7. And she leads us to Nibelheim with Rydia from 4. Are you keeping track of the score? We meet Snow from 13 who needs our help fighting a giant flan. Do we count that flan as the giant flan from 13 too? I don't think so, 1 point. But in the desert region, we do meet Lightning, so that's another point for 13. We stop by a small merchant town of Caravan, which technically is from Final Fantasy I, so it counts. Edgar from 6 ambushes us with his sandy Figaro castle, 2 points. He puts us in an underground prison, the very same one from 8, and Squall helps us break out, 2 points for 8. The prison leads to a Mako reactor where we find Shulk. Shulk from Dirge Cerberus. 2 points to 7. Oh, and Vivi's here. So 9's on the board now. The next area is a big bridge, but here's the thing. There are lots of big bridges in Final Fantasy. All of them are referencing 5 in name. But this isn't the big bridge from 5. This is just a big bridge. Actually, it's Alexander. The whole thing is Alexander. So the name is referencing 5, but it is not a 5 area. It does not count. Sorry. But don't worry. Of course we're gonna run into Gilgamesh here and Bartz. So that's still 2 points for 5. And for some reason, Aiko from 9 is also here. I'm thinking they didn't know what to do with Final Fantasy IX. It's not looking good for the 9 heads out there. And what do you know, the bridge leads right into the Tome Town of the Ancients, which is actually just the Library of Ancients from 5, so that's another one. At the library, we meet Cloud, who I'm pretty sure is from Final Fantasy II, and Celeste from 6. And whoa, hold up, we got a Cid update! I almost forgot. Which Cid could they have possibly chosen for this game? Actually, they came up with an original Cid. And he's a wacky robot guy. Well, really, he's a human soul who was embedded into an abandoned robot body doomed to live in this ancient library alone forever. It would have been cooler if we had like a legion of Cids from all the games, but Robot Cid's cool too. Next up is Train Graveyard from 7, and that is officially 3 areas from the same game. I know this is a tired take, but can we please cool it with 7? Square. There are 14 other games to choose from, such as Final Fantasy X.
I am loving this weather.
It makes me just want to laugh out loud.
This is Besaid Island, where we meet Tidus and Shantoto from 11, so that's first point for 11. You know, she was chosen for Dissidia and Theatrhythm, but she never really came across as the most important character in that game to me. I guess I could be wrong. Final Fantasy XI is like a fever dream at this point. Shantoto leads us to the Sunken Temple from Final Fantasy I. To start the last act, we get attacked by Terra from 6 because the bad guys tricked her. We climb the Crystal Tower from 3, flee to Balam Garden from 8, and during the post-fake out ending, we meet Taka, Refia's adoptive uncle from 3. Very important character. In the Maxima version, you can find Noctis and Besaid and do a little fishing game with him. Final Fantasy XV is too new to have a fair shot at this, but we'll throw him on the board. Now, if we're counting post-game content, you can also run into Garland, Cecil, Zack, and Sarah. Let's tally up. In first place with a whopping 7 points, ha ha ha, it's 7. Second place is Final Fantasy I, and that's only counting stuff that's truly like from that game alone. You know, I didn't count the 4 fiends who make an appearance or any like Bahamut. All the summons technically come from, let's not overcomplicate things. I'm talking about characters and areas. Third place is Final Fantasy X. That's expected. This is a pretty popular one. Then, with a 5-way tie with 4 points each, Final Fantasy 3, 5, 6, 8, and 13. Maybe that's the most balanced amount of representation, I guess. Like if 7 shared the love a bit, maybe these next few would be better off. 5th place, this is shocking, with only 2 points. A 2-way tie with Final Fantasy 4 and 9. Wow. Some of the most treasured games in the series. Cecil is pushed away to post-game content, and Zidane is not even in the game. Oh, you're making enemies, Square. Then in last place, not really a shocker, but Final Fantasy XI. Honestly, nice it made it in at all. Technically tied with Crystal Chronicles Echoes of Time because Charlotta's in the game. I don't get that. Get out of here. Get out of here. So that's the game. I hope you had a fun time with that. Hope you made some good predictions. Oh wait, am I forgetting some? Yeah. Final Fantasy II did not qualify. There is a championship medal for Firion, so that's all the representation it gets though. That's pretty unfortunate. Same case for 14. I thought 14 was kind of huge already at this point, but Y'shtola gets a championship medal. Nothing else in the game. Now we can move on. No. We're actually missing anything from 12. 12, buried in the ground, last place. They did add a championship medal for Balthier in the Maxima version, but 12 had nothing in the original. Also, Balthier and not Vaughn. Again. Oh, Vaughn. You couldn't make it into the first Dissidia. You couldn't make it into this game either. How does it feel to just be by far the most unloved protagonist in the entire series? I'm actually starting to feel bad for Vaughn. But you know what this game's really missing? Villains. There are no Final Fantasy villains in the whole game. Except for one championship medal. I'll give you 5 seconds to guess who it is. Yeah, it's Sephiroth. Well, we're about ready to wrap it up, but I should take a second to talk about Maxima. What is World of Final Fantasy Maxima? It's a new version of the game that came out about 2 years later with some quality of life improvements and some extra content. This was the first version that came to Xbox One and Switch, but since PS4 and PC players already had the first version, Square decided to release it as a DLC upgrade just for them. The problem is, this is a $15 upgrade that, in the context of DLC, is not substantial in any way. Like, let me read some of the features this adds. The player can have 12 Mirages in their party instead of 10. Several battle-related items were added. The player can now carry up to 120 Mira Jewels instead of 99. I think I had like 10 in my playthrough. The player can now carry up to 999 Arma Gems instead of 99. You can watch a music video in the main menu. This isn't DLC. These are just patches that would have made the game slightly better. So you'll find that all the reviews on Steam are mixed for this reason. All the actual content they add is post-game super boss type stuff that only completionists are gonna really go for. It also adds a new feature that lets you transform into a champion in battle for a short time. That's kinda cool, you can play as these protagonists. But the problem with that is you lose all of your abilities and MP. It kinda makes the game much harder, so personally I never did it. Unless you're gonna go hard and 100% this game, there's no reason to buy the Maxima upgrade. If you're on Switch or Xbox, you don't have a choice. You gotta buy Maxima by default, it's baked in and the price is more expensive on those systems. You got screwed, sorry. But hey, having 12 party members instead of 10, gotta admit that was probably the best feature. You can just be training 2 more Mirages than usual, so it's nice. But it's not $15 nice. Conclusion. It's a fun game. Gameplay's a little confusing at first, but you'll get into it and see a surprising amount of depth. there's a lot of extra stuff to do as well. If you've played all these games, that alone is going to make it fun to go through just to see what's next, or to catch some of your favorite Final Fantasy monsters. Did you know Mandragoras evolve into Malboros? Apparently they do! You might think the chibi style of the game is a little lame. I get that. They wanted to make it cute and fun to get kids to play it. Might have gone too far in that direction, especially with the incredibly grating Tama following you around at all times. I know I already made the comparison to Funko Pops when I talked about the characters in Theater Rhythm, but come on. They're little cube head guys with all the same exact proportions and just like different hair. All they're missing is the black soulless eyes, and they're literally Funko Pops. I wonder if there's a future for this game. As I said before, the director has fully written a potential sequel and is just waiting to hear from Square Enix if they want to greenlight that. That secret ending that directly teased a sequel was added in the Maxima version. So that was only 5 years ago. It is absolutely not too late for a sequel. They could be working on that right now. I'd play a sequel. There are so many more worlds to explore and characters to see. Put Firion in this one. Put Zidane in it. Von, skip him. With that, it's time to move on to the next Final Fantasy world. Which one could that be? Get in, loser. We're going God-killing. And so Tom and Tom drove off after their next challenge. Are they driving towards victory, danger, or disaster? No one knows for sure, so be sure you're here for the next episode of REFFOID, Final Fantasy XV, Part 1.